All right, it looks like we are getting most of our participants are coming in. Welcome, welcome. Everyone, thanks for joining us today. We're really excited about this webinar. This has been a long time in the making. So we'll first start off before we start getting to the extraordinary team and do a little bit of introductions for you. So today, you get the pleasure of hearing from both Jack Zenger and Joe Folkman, who founded Zenger Folkman and are world-renowned experts in the field of leadership development. We're glad to have them here. I'm Brianna Corin. I'm the Director of Content Marketing for Zenger Folkman, and Oren is going to be, he's our VP of Sales, and he's going to be over on the chat. So if you have any questions about the product or the research that you hear today, Oren will answer those questions for you. And if we can't get an answer for you right away, then we will be sure to come back and email you and get back with you. All right, so based on our research, we know that leadership effectiveness is the #1 driver of productivity and engagement. So much depends on a leader, which is why our main focus at Zenger Folkman has been on leaders. But if you were to look at the second driver, what is the thing that's going to make the biggest difference after that? And it's the team. And that's why we're talking about today. We're excited to introduce a product that's been years in the making. We've piloted it with some clients. We've seen incredible results, and just shows us how valuable team development is to organizations. So for those who are new here, at Zenger Folkman, leadership development is our core focus. Jack Zenger and Joe Folkman have pioneered groundbreaking research in this field. And what sets us apart is our unwavering commitment to strengths-based leadership and coaching. So our research shows that it's not the absence of weakness that makes a great leader or a team great. It's the presence of a few powerful strengths. And when those strengths are present, they don't just elevate one individual, they become contagious. They lift entire teams and the organization. And that's what you'll see from the research today on this webinar. So we're going to shift the focus from individuals to the collective. The extraordinary team is about more than better collaboration. It's about achieving measurable strategic results through the power of team strengths. So while individual development remains essential, the next frontier is understanding how teams interact, where they excel, and how they can amplify their effectiveness. So Joe will later get into some really compelling data on how this process has driven engagement and satisfaction across the organization. I know he's excited to talk about that. By the end of the session, you will see how the extraordinary team helps organizations multiply their impact, elevate performance, and gain a competitive edge. So with that, I will turn the time over to Jack to take you into the details of this powerful new development experience.
Okay, let me just say that why a team product? You can look at a company's performance at 3 different levels. Certainly how individuals perform. You can look at it how networks or small teams perform, or you can look at it at the organizational level. Over the years, we've had numerous of our clients who have asked us to develop something that would address the issue of teams. And so, Joe, tell us why this is so important. Why is the team such a vital element?
Well, thanks, Jack. And as you think about flow and productivity, let's say you recruit an amazing group of individual contributors and managers. They've all got talent, but they become part of a team. And then that really leads to the organization's performance. But most of us have had the experience of being in a situation where you were in a team that wasn't functioning well. There was conflict in the team, there were disagreements, there was fighting. Basically, you have individual performers who perform less well, who underperform because of that bad team, because of that ineffective team. And that results in the organizational performance going down. And I know that, several years ago, I was part of a really ineffective team, and it really affected my performance. Well, it doesn't have to. One of the things that we know is that if you create a great team environment, a team where you love being there, where you're engaged, where you really are performing at your peak, that experience can really elevate the individual efforts of leaders and managers and individual contributors and really affect the performance of the organization. And so that's what we're talking about today. How do you take the team to the next level? I opened some data recently where we did a survey in 2023, and it was a broad organizational survey. And what we found is that in 2023, the organization had 53% of positive responses to the survey. And they went to work and they really wanted to improve. And so in 2025, we remeasured it, and the percentage of positive responses went from 53 to 62. And the organization sort of said, okay, we've arrived, we're done, it's all fixed. But as I looked at the data, I wanted them to understand something. This broad, large organization, this division, there was a lot of groups within the division. And when we broke it out by individual groups, what we found is that when you looked at the individual teams, there were 5 teams where the average percent of positive responses was 10, and then 5 teams where it was 26. But you can also see there was 5 teams on the other end that had 99% positive, and another 5 teams that had 94% positive. Now, Tip O'Neill was a senator. He was famous for the phrase, all politics is local. That's how he said it, is local. But his point was that you can have some really broad issues, but really what affects voters is the issues that are happening to them. And what affects team members are the issues that impact them every day. And it's the team issues that are really important. And, it's nice to have organizational wide data, but until we get down to the team level, we don't really know how effective that team is and the difference it's going to make. So as we go into the team, what we're suggesting is in your organization, there's a bunch of teams that really need to measure their effectiveness. And so they can increase it once they get the measure, because actually they don't know where they are on that performance curve. And so even teams that are performing well can increase their overall effectiveness. But after the teams get data, what we're recommending is the team leader selects 2 dimensions, one weakness to fix and one strength to build. And we found with the organizational data, we wanted to get both a building of strengths, but also the focus on weakness. The other thing that we found that was helpful in the team situation is that rather than leaving the whole thing to the manager, we wanted individual contributors in the team, each one of them, to create a plan for changing. Again, that team functions as a team. And so if you're going to change the team, you got to change the individuals. And so each individual walks out of this experience with a development plan for building one strength and improving one weakness.
So to summarize, there are really 3 kind of distinct objectives for this new program. One is to help individuals understand what constitutes a really extraordinary team. Secondly, to apply that to their own team so that they really understand, how are we doing now? And finally, to leave with a clear plan of action to improve your own team's effectiveness. Now, let's just kind of review the general flow of all this. We're very fond of beginning any course like this with a why. You know, why does this topic rise to the top? And so we try to establish a business case for it. Then secondly, we want to have people understand what does the data say about what constitutes a highly effective team. The third element of this roadmap for this program is that every team member will receive, as Joe said earlier, the results for the team itself. And then I'm going to introduce you a little bit in a little while to the notion of strength builders. This is a concept and a practice that's unique to our firm. It's based on some research that we've done about how do we help a group that wants to get better, not just focus on one thing, but to see that there are alternative pathways. And we'll expand on that idea. And then finally, at the end of this process, again, the team will kind of leave with a plan for their development. As Joe said, working on one weakness, also then working on a strength. So what is it that makes a team in the overall, it brings about this difference? And Joe, there's some data that you've developed that really describes the specific outcomes that I think are really instructive. So in order for people to achieve that understanding of what constitutes an effective team, please review the data.
Well, that's true, Jack. And one of the things we find is, and this is a validation for our research, there's a correlation between this overall effectiveness that we measure in the team assessment and outcomes. So this particular graph shows you engagement. And basically it suggests that if the overall effectiveness is low, the engagement is low at the 22nd percentile. But if the overall effectiveness measure is high, as we measure the team, engagement goes up to the 84th percentile. So there's a strong correlation between employee engagement and the overall team effectiveness. We've also found that there's a correlation between this overall effectiveness measure and turnover. When overall effectiveness is low, turnover is high. And whenever overall effectiveness is high, turnover is low. The third thing we've measured here is the ultimate measure, profitability. So we're working with a mortgage bank. We had a series of offices scattered all over the US, and we measured the overall team effectiveness, and we found that the low performing teams, their percent profit was at the 28th, moderate was at the 43rd, but the high performing teams, their average profit was at the 59th. So this correlation between profitability and overall team effectiveness. There's lots of reasons to want to improve the team effectiveness.
So what do we know about what makes a team truly extraordinary and that separates it from just the average team? As you might guess, we just didn't make these up out of thin air. We just didn't sit one day in a room and kind of conceive of them. We relied on the data that we have. We had data on about 122,000 team members. We had data on about 10,000 teams. We were able to compare those items and those dimensions that were most predictive of those highest scoring teams in comparison to the lower scoring teams. And what we discovered was that there were indeed 15 such dimensions. And we've clustered them into 4 groups, as you can see. Beginning over there at kind of the 1 o'clock position, the whole dimension of credibility, the practicing of integrity and trust. The second category has to do with execution, how the team functions in terms of producing its results and how accountable they feel and how they make decisions. There's 5 of those, as you see. Then there's the third category, which is relationships. How do the people in the team interact with one another? How do they communicate? How well do they feel that they're included in this team? Do they collaborate? And so you see then the final category has to do with the team's ability to focus on important elements of the organization's overall strategy. And how adaptable are they? How innovative are they? So these are the elements that constitute our research about what makes an effective team. As we mentioned earlier, each team member will receive information about how their team is doing. So Joe, if you would, review what the participants are going to receive in their participant guide about this.
So each team member will come into a meeting where they receive the feedback report on the team and the team performance, and they can look at those 15 dimensions and how they were doing, plus an overall dimension that looks at that and the engagement dimension. But they also get a participant guide. Now, we're suggesting that really to get the team to improve, you've got to get the whole team involved. And so this is an exercise for the team leader, but also each individual member. And so there is a debrief for the team leader to get that person prepared to have this meeting. So before the meeting, there's a debrief where that team leader is given the data and they discuss with the facilitator how they're going to proceed and what they're going to do in the meeting, when it'll start and when it will end, those kinds of things. But then the team meets together with the manager, with the facilitator, and they're going to go through and look at the actual data for the team and review it and really identify some strengths to build and a weakness that would probably be able to fix. Now, when we're looking at the data, we give people an overall total score, and we call that the overall team effectiveness. And we show you and when you get this data, how you compare to the norms we've collected from hundreds of teams. Now, we can also, in the team report, get data from the manager of the team and team members, but we can also broaden that. So you could get this manager too, which is maybe the boss of the team leader, and team members too, which are stakeholders that they interact with the team. They really work closely with the team. So you can get up to 4 different rater groups to respond to the assessment and get a broader set of feedback. Most of the time, you're just going to depend on the team manager and the team members. We break that data down. We show you the 15 dimensions, but we also break it down to each individual item, and we give the individual data so people can go through that report and identify what they're really good at, where their problems in the team, and really get a good understanding. There's also written comments in the survey to understand what people are thinking about the team in general. So this is the data. Now, Jack, talk about leveraging strength builders. You mentioned that earlier, and that's an interesting approach.
Yes. So the notion of a strength builders is a little bit of an abstraction to some people when they hear about it initially. So I'm going to give you 3 different metaphors to think about. One way of thinking of these is that they are creating multiple pathways rather than having only one path that leads to Rome. There can be a number of roads that lead to Rome. Secondly, you might want to envision them as kind of side doors and back doors. The only way to get into a house isn't only the front door. Sometimes, for instance, if you're playing pool, you want to get a certain ball in a certain pocket. There's no direct line, so you have to kind of bank it off of the one of the bumpers, and you make your shot that way. Finally, another way of thinking about these strength builders is that they're kind of like what athletes do in terms of training that is really built to kind of be cross-training. So why is it that a great tennis player kind of runs long distances or does weightlifting? Why is it that a football coach would have his 300-pound lineman go take a ballet class, learning how to maybe improve their footwork? It's because those skills really are related to this dimension. So let me give you an example of this notion of strength builders and how it might enhance something that the team wanted to get better on. Do you recall one of the elements of one of the 15 dimensions we measured in the execution category was the practice of teams being focused on results. One of the strength builders that we identified was the concept that teams have either very positive, collaborative work environments, and sometimes they have kind of prickly and not so nice work environments. What's the impact of an organization, of a team working on achieving a positive work environment? So here's the data. If this is a team that has really a strong focus on results, but they are not particularly a positive work environment, the likelihood of that team being one of your top 10% teams is about 9%. If you were to flip that the other way and say, okay, what if it's a team that's not all that focused on results, but boy, they have a really collegial work environment. They really work well with each other. What's the likelihood of that team being in the top 10% of all teams? And the answer is about 4%. But now comes the obvious question. What happens when you get a team that is focused on results and has a really positive work environment? If I had a drum here, I'd do a little drum roll for you. If you've got a piece of paper and a pencil or a ballpoint pen, write down your prediction of what the likelihood will be of this team that has a high focus on results, has a high focus on a positive work environment. What's the real answer about the probability of them being one of your top 10% teams? And the answer is not 13, obviously. It is 88%. So I hope that you were relatively accurate, but this is an illustration of how these strength builders can really help a team achieve something that's really important based on our research to its overall effectiveness.
So in the participant guide, what we'll do is we'll show the results of this research where we talk about these strength builders. And as you can see, for results, one strength builder is driving efficiency and then setting clear priorities, ensuring accountability and fostering innovation, but also cultivating a positive work environment. And so what it gives people is some alternative ways to think about, well, what would be the best way for us to increase the results or improve the results? Now, without this, you just say, well, just work harder, work longer, just buckle down. But this gives you some alternative paths, and it gives you some alternative ways to thinking about how to improve a team and how to make it better. And the manual is very rich with these kinds of things because it gives you the specifics, it gives you some suggested actions that you can take to really create a development plan very quickly. And, you know, at the end of the day, this results in a development plan. And so the team gains consensus around two dimensions, a strengths to build and a weakness to fix. And from this point forward, the development plan, what we also want people to do is not only create a team development plan, but an individual development plan. And we think this is crucial. This is a way to sort of say, hey, we're a team. That means each one of us contributes. So what can you do to improve the results? Or if maybe it's inclusion, whatever things you pick. And again, what the plan is focused on is team weaknesses to fix and a strength to build, and only two things. We try to limit this so we don't have people kind of trying to conquer the universe, but really focusing on two things: one strength to build, one weakness to fix. If I go to any organization, I've asked people, I said, is there a team that's underperforming here? And they go, absolutely. And I go, okay, so what are you doing about it? And they go, well, we're having a really strong talk with the manager. We're giving them some, some feedback or whatever. But do they understand what's happening? Have they assessed what's going on? And most of the time they haven't. The other discussion you can have is, do you have a team that's performing incredibly well, that's doing incredible things? Hell yeah. What's the magic there? What are they doing? And with this assessment, you can do this. And we'd suggest that this could be a great practice for every organization.
So we would sort of conclude by saying, being a good team, that's okay. But when you aspire to be an extraordinary team, that becomes very exhilarating. We wish you a lot of success in that journey.
All right. Thank you, Jack and Joe, for sharing all of those updates and about the extraordinary team. We're excited to chat with you more about how to bring this product into your organization by running a pilot of the extraordinary team development experience. We're going to have an exit survey, and you can indicate your interest in that survey, and we'll contact you and answer any more questions that you may have. As always, we love to have your feedback on this session. And so we have a $25 Amazon gift card that we'll have a drawing for everyone who completes the exit survey. You can find it in the chat, or it'll come to you after the webinar has concluded. You can see that URL right there. Please let us know what you think. And thank you for attending the webinar today, and be sure to register for next month.